if you have court orders, the first thing you should do is read the whole order entirely so you understand what you're getting yourself into. If you're just getting into court, if you're just going to court and they're proposing orders for you, please, for the love of God, read them before you sign anything. Read them before you sign anything. Read them before you sign anything. Do you read your court orders? And if you don't, or you don't understand them, this video is for you. We're going to go over some terminology in those court orders that you must know. Must, shall, may. Let's go over that terminology. Let's go over these court orders and let's see if I can help you understand your court orders a little better. Some of y'all that are just starting off, you need to know where your court orders are or where they're filed or where they're kept. So what I tell everybody is just go down to your district clerk's website if they have one, or go to their office and ask for your court orders. If you live in Bexar County, go to the Bexar County District Clerk's office. If you live in Tarrant County, go to the Tarrant County District Clerk's office, and so on. One of the things I always hear parents say is, well, she got full custody. No, there's not full custody in Texas, okay? There's sole managing and there's joint managing. So let's take a look. Now, remember that terminology I was talking about? Rights and duties, must, shall, may. All of those words, you need to know the legal definition of those words. So let's dive into it. If you go down to conservators, this is going to tell you what you are to your child. It's going to define it. So in 2016, I was a conservator of my child. I was a joint managing conservator. And it says right here, Carolyn Jean Pena and George Eric Saldana are appointed joint managing conservators of the child. Each parent appointed as a conservator of the child has at all times the following rights and duties of a parent. Well, you can just Google Texas Family Code Chapter 151. Chapter 151.001 of the Texas Family Code says, rights and duties of a parent. A parent of a child has the following rights and duties. 1, the right to have physical possession, to direct the moral and religious training and designate the residence of the child, the duty of care, control, and protection and reasonable discipline of the child, the duty to support the child, including providing for the child with clothing, food, shelter, medical, dental care, and education, and so on. Again, that's Texas Family Code 151.001. Save it, because we're going to come back to it. What does rights and duties mean? And if you haven't really digged into the word right, what's the legal definition of right? So I looked it up. In an abstract sense, justice, ethical correctness, or harmony of the rules of the law or principles of morals. In concrete legal sense, a power, privilege, demand, or claim possessed by a particular person by virtue of the law. And again, what do we have here? Agreed order in suit affecting the parent-child relationship. It talks about who the children are, who the conservators are. And if you keep scrolling down, it says possession and access. Let's get into those definitions. If you're a part of our group, Interference with Child Custody, we have a file section. If you go into our file section, you click number 4, state and federal laws, you'll see something that I put together. This is the Texas Family Code. This is chapter 152.102. And it goes over what a child is. A child means an individual who has not attained 18 years of age. A lot of law enforcement officers come out to your residence and they say, well, the child is 14 or 15. They can make their own decision. And that's absolutely incorrect. A child is a child until they're 18 years of age. The law enforcement doesn't get to rewrite how the legislature has legislated the definition for the word child. And then we always talk about child custody determination. What determines child custody? And it's right here. It's defined. I didn't write it. The legislator did. Child custody determination means a judgment, decree, or other order of a court providing for legal custody, physical custody, or visitation with respect to a child. Now, we just went over possession and access in the court order. So what does possession and access mean? And again, if you scroll down, you're going to see this. Number 16, visitation means the possession or access to the child. And what does it say here? Possession and access or visitation. Now, some of us call law enforcement when we can't see our children. And in your big, bold print on your court order, it says notice to peace officers. Notice to peace officers. This is something that the family code has stated has to be in every court order. Notice to peace officer. And a peace officer is a constable, it's a sheriff, it's a police officer. It's anybody who has taken the peace officer licensing course through TCOL in the state of Texas. It could be a school resource officer. As long as he is a peace officer, he has been noticed by your court order that he may use reasonable efforts to enforce the terms of the child custody specified in this order. A peace officer who relies on the terms of a court order and the officer's agencies are entitled to the applicable immunity against any claim, civil or otherwise, regarding the officer's good faith acts performed in the scope of the officer's duties. So let's talk about legal custody. We just talked about child custody determination means a judgment, decree, or other order of a court providing for legal custody. Well, what is legal custody? Well, you just scroll down. Legal custody means the managing conservatorship of a child. So if you're a joint managing conservator, you absolutely have the right for legal custody. The Texas Family Code Public Policy 153.001 assure that children will have frequent, continuing contact with parents who have shown the ability to act in the best interest of the child. When the judge has rendered these orders and has signed it, the judge has already deemed what's in the best interest of the child, and therefore they have already set a visitation or a possession and access schedule, first, third, and fifth, or extended standard possession times. But you should know that the Texas policy or the public policy, as per the family code, says it should assure that children have frequent and continuing contact. So when law enforcement doesn't enforce these court orders or they don't help you, they're not assuring that the children will have that frequent contact as the judge has already deemed in the best interest of the child. And the best interest of the child, right? We all know that this is a very, very vague statute, right? If you go to the Texas Family Code 153.002, the best interest of the child shall always be the primary consideration of the court in determining the issues of conservatorship and possession and access of the child. Now, what does possession and access of the child means? It means visitation. There you go. Visitation, possession, and access. You get it? So before we get into rights and duties of a parent, let's look at the definition of what right means. If you look up all the definitions for a right, they all pretty much say fundamental legal, social, or ethical principles of freedom or entitlement. Or it says a power, privilege, demand, or claim possessed by a particular person by virtue of law. Okay. I didn't write it, but that's what every definition says. And even artificial intelligence, AI, says the same thing. It's an entitlement. It's a power. It's a privilege given to that person. So when we go back to rights and duties of the parent, you have the right to physical possession. If you are, I hate saying the word non-custodial, but if you are the other parent and you go to pick up your child first, third, and fifth, and you have the right to physical possession unless you are limited by the court. Let's get into duties. So I don't need to have the true definition of legal duty, right? All I just need to know is the ballpark. And a legal duty is an obligation created by law or a contract. What is your possession and access? It's a contract. What is your duty to your child? It's an obligation. So know the definition, what your legal duty is, and know the definition of what your legal right is. So the family code says right to have physical possession, but let's keep going. And go to 151.003 of the Texas Family Code, limitations on state agency. A state agency may not adopt rules or policies or take any action that violates the fundamental right and duty of a parent to direct the upbringing of the parent's child. It says may. So if we go to the Texas Government Code section or chapter 311.016, may, shall, must, etc. The following constructions apply unless the context in which the word or phrase appears necessarily requires a different construction or unless a different construction is expressly provided by statute. These are the definitions: may, shall, must, is entitled to, may not, is not entitled to, is not required to. These are the definitions, and you should know these definitions. May creates a discretionary authority or grants permission or a power. So it creates discretionary. You can or you can't. Shall imposes a duty. Shall imposes a duty. Shall imposes a duty. Well, what's the definition of duty again? An obligation. Must creates or recognizes a condition precedent. In most of our court orders, we see a lot of mays and shalls. That's why I think it's important that you know these definitions: may, shall, must. You really don't see is entitled to, may not, is not entitled to, or is not required to in your court orders, but you should know may, shall, and must. And this is where my advocacy started. Some of y'all know that I founded Interference with Child Custody, Texas Penal Code 2503. I was tired of having these orders telling me that I had certain rights, entitlements, certain duties, but nobody would uphold them. So when you start reading your orders, it says weekends, George Saldana shall have the right to possession of the child. Now, when you tell that to law enforcement, sometimes they don't understand that. And if you go back to shall imposes a duty. It is my duty, my obligation to pick up my child. So when I go there and law enforcement refuses me, sometimes we have a problem. In the past, I was arrested for criminal trespass when I was there to pick up my child with a court order. Now it's my obligation.
You can watch on YouTube what happened right after Christmas in 2019. His ex-girlfriend answers the door, but won't let him in to see his son. The cops come.
I'm gonna go ask her now on your behalf if she's willing to release the kid. If she's not, then it's gonna be documented and we're done. Okay?
But wait till you see who got arrested.
The court order. I have a court order supposed to pick up my son, and I'm getting arrested for criminal trespassing.
Saldana gets arrested for trespassing, a misdemeanor. But his ex doesn't get arrested for interference with child custody, a felony. It took almost 3 years to get Judge Sandra Peak to hold Carolyn Pena in civil contempt of court for the repeated violations of the court order. And then she was placed on probation for 10 years.
And again, shall imposes a duty. So when you go to pick up your child and your child is not there, the other parent doesn't want to turn over the child, let's get into some other wording that you might see in your court order. A legal duty is an obligation created by a law or a contract. Again, I'm not an attorney. I just like to Google and read things, put things together. This isn't legal advice. I'm just telling you where to look. So if you go back to 151.003 of the Texas Family Code, limitations on state agencies, remember, law enforcement, the district attorney's office, those are all state agencies. A state agency may not adopt a rule or policies. Again, what is may? May creates discretionary authority or grants permission or a power. But if you scroll on top, it says you have the right to physical possession. And if you go to number 2, it says you have the duty of care, control, and protection. What is a duty? An obligation. Now, if you're in child support court, they're going to tell you it's your duty to support your child, and they will hold you to the highest of standards because they believe that all children shall be supported, or because it's your duty. But when it comes to possession and access, we have the same rights, the same duties, and yet nobody upholds them. Why? Because child support makes a lot of money for the state. So if you go through your court orders, Thursday, George Saldana shall have the right to possession of the child on Thursdays. Spring vacation shall have possession of the child on even numbers. And this is the problem. Since 2016, I've been trying to enforce these orders. And in Harris County, they don't really give a shit what your court orders say, even though there is legal terminology in there that tells parents what their rights and duties are. Parents who reside over 100 miles apart on the weekend shall have the right of possession, and so on and so on. General terms and conditions, Carolyn Pena shall surrender the child to George Saldana at the beginning of each period of George Saldana's possession and access. So let's dig a little deeper into the family code. And again, I'm referring back to number 4, state and federal laws. I've already printed these out. I've scanned them. I've highlighted the portions for you to read. Rights of parents at all times. You have the right to receive information. Does that right necessarily mean that the other parent is going to give it to you? Absolutely not. It just says you have the right to that information. Sometimes you have to fight for that information. Sometimes you have to fight to be a parent. If you have to fight in court and go to court continuously, like myself, for possession and access issues because the other parent just doesn't want to abide by the court order, then maybe custody needs to be flipped. This is a new law that came in just a few legislative sessions ago. The right to attend school activities, including school lunches, performances, and field trips. Right now, there's a lot of graduations going on. There's parents that are wanting to be there, wanting to see their children across the stage. And then you have the custodial parent that likes to piss off the non-custodial and say, we're giving your ticket away to the stepmom or to the significant other or to other family instead. You absolutely have that right to attend school activities, school lunches, performances, field trips, and graduations. This one's the big one. Rights and duties during periods of possession. Rights and duties during periods of possession. Let me say it again. Rights and duties during periods of possession. And the reason I do this, the reason why I reiterate things so much is because I want it to stick with you. I want you to remember it, that in the family code, they have a section. It's 153.074, rights and duties during periods of possession. These are your rights and duties during your periods of possession. I hope I made that clear. Unless limited by the court, unless in your court order it tells you you don't have certain rights, these rights pertain to you. Unless limited by a court order, a parent appointed as a conservator of a child has the following rights and duties. We know the definition of a right. We know the definition of a duty during the period that the parent has possession of the child. So at 6 o'clock on 1st, 3rd, and 5th, or whether you have extended standard on Thursdays at 6 o'clock, you have the duty. The duty, what did we say duty was? An obligation of care, control, and protection and reasonable discipline of the child. So you have the duty for care, control, and protection. Now, let's flip this on the other side. So at 5:59, that parent, the opposing parent or the offending parent has the duty for care, control, and protection. They have the duty and they have the duty to control that child. So they have the duty to bring that child to your meeting spot, wherever you're meeting, whether it's the police station, whether it's the other parent's house, it's a Pizza Hut, whatever. That parent at 5:59 has the duty for care, control, and protection. Now, we also hear a lot of parents say, oh, well, mijo is sick or mija is sick. The daughter or the son are sick, and we're not going to turn the child over to you. You, as a parent, during your periods of possession, once that clock strikes 6 o'clock or the school bell rings at 3 o'clock, you pick them up after school, your rights and duties activate during your period of possession. So at 6 o'clock, you have the duty for care, control, and protection. For instance, myself, I was arrested trying to pick up my child with a valid judicial order. My rights, my duties to that child were They were dismissed. They were violated. The child's rights to his parents were dismissed and were violated. Now, does that sound like public policy? Instead, I was considered the problem child. I was considered the aggressor when I was just following what the judge has already deemed in the best interest of my child by trying to pick up. Nobody wants to hold the other parent accountable or the offending parent accountable. In closing, I want to leave you with these two thoughts. One, we went over the definitions in the Texas Government Code, Chapter 311. .016. We went over may, and it's defined as being discretionary, shall being defined as imposing a duty, and must being must. We went over the definition of right, meaning or defined as an entitlement or a privilege. We went over duty, defined as an obligation. Now remember, shall imposes a duty, and duty equals an obligation. So I want you to go back and reread your whole court order, and I want you to think about all of that, and I want you to see if you have a better grasp and a better understanding of your court order. The second portion is this, is that there's bad parents out there. There's parents that don't want to turn over their child to the other parent, and they're going to use whatever means necessary to get what they want. And those selfish parents will use criminal trespass. They will use restraining orders, and they will use protective orders. When they use those orders of protection unjustifiably or unethically, you need to still know what those orders say or what they pertain to. So it's also important that you don't violate protective orders, criminal trespass orders, or any of those other orders that may be rendered based on those false allegations. What we're seeing in protective order courts are that some of these offending parents or parents that are retaining the children are using these protective orders to further retain the child from the good parent. And so sometimes the good parent gets these protective orders, based on false allegation, rendered to them. And when that happens, sometimes there is a protective order that keeps both parents from each other. With that being said, sometimes the rights and duties get thrown in there in the mix, and then people don't know what their rights and duties to their child are. And these offending parents like to say that some of the good parents are harassing them by showing up to their house with the police, or they're harassing them by using App Close or Talking Parents or Family Wizard to communicate with them. And then they go back to the protective order court. And what they do at the protective order court is saying that, Mr. Saldana harassed me by bringing the cops to my residence, but they forget to say, because it was his right and his obligation and his duty. So it's important to start shuffling those words, start knowing the definitions of what may, shall, must, right, and duties are. I just want to say thanks for watching. I hope I was able to jog your brain a little bit and make you look at your court orders a little differently. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Share it if you want to share it with others. I appreciate your time, and I hope this is going to help you somewhere along down the road.